Have you ever made a single decision that completely shattered the life you knew? One reckless night, one moment of weakness, and suddenly, everything changes. Imagine waking up next to your billionaire boss, the memory of last night a blur, your heart pounding with regret, only to realize weeks later that the consequences are far worse than you ever imagined. Because now, there's a baby. And he just found out. If your pulse just spiked, you're not alone. This isn't just another steamy office romance. This is a story about power, secrets, and a single night that rewrote 2 lives forever. And by the end of this video, you'll get the answers you're searching for. Asterisk, how did this happen? What does he want now? And most importantly, will she survive the fallout? Asterisk, stick with me, because this story will grip you from the first second to the last. And if you've ever wondered what happens when fate plays a cruel game, trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Let's talk about her first, the woman at the center of this storm. She wasn't supposed to fall for him. He was her boss, a man who commanded boardrooms like a king, his reputation as icy as his piercing gaze. But beneath that flawless suit was a magnetism she couldn't resist, no matter how hard she tried. And that night, the company gala, too much champagne, the way his hand lingered on her waist, it all spiraled out of control. She swore it would never happen again. But fate had other plans. Now, let's talk about him. The billionaire who always got what he wanted. Until he got her. He wasn't a man who believed in mistakes. Every move he made was calculated, every relationship a transaction. But the moment he sees that pregnancy test, his world fractures. Because this wasn't part of the deal. And the scariest part? He doesn't look angry. He looks obsessed. You're probably wondering, asterisk, what does he do next? Asterisk, does he demand a DNA test? Threaten her? Or does he do the one thing she never expected? Claim them both? I know what you're thinking. This sounds like something straight out of a movie. But sometimes, reality is stranger than fiction. And the twist coming? Even I didn't see it coming. Here's the thing about billionaires. They don't play fair. And when they want something, they'll burn the world down to get it. So ask yourself, what would you do if the most powerful man you knew suddenly decided you belonged to him? If you're hooked already, you're exactly where you need to be. Because this story isn't just about a baby, a boss, or a broken taboo. It's about what happens when the line between mistake and destiny blurs. And there's no going back. But before we go any further, let me ask you this. Asterisk, have you ever kept a secret so big it could ruin you? Asterisk, because she did. And in just a few moments, you'll find out what happens when that secret explodes. Stay with me. The truth is coming. But it's not what you think. This intro hooks with mystery, psychological tension, and direct audience engagement while keeping the language raw and human. The cliffhanger forces retention, and the keywords align with trending romance/sexy drama searches. Let me know if you'd like any refinements. She had always been careful, meticulous, even. Every decision in her life was calculated, every risk weighed before taken. But that night at the gala, something inside her snapped. Maybe it was the way he looked at her across the room. His dark eyes burning with something far more dangerous than professional admiration. Maybe it was the way his fingers brushed against hers when he handed her that glass of champagne, sending an electric shock down her spine. Or maybe it was the way he whispered her name, low and rough, as if it was a secret only they shared. Whatever it was, it shattered her self-control. And now, staring at the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, she realized she wasn't the only one who would pay for that mistake. He wasn't just any billionaire. He was Alexander Carter, a man whose name alone could move markets, whose reputation was built on cold precision and ruthless ambition. Women threw themselves at him, but he never caught them, until her. She was different. Smart, defiant, untouchable. And that was the problem. Because the moment she walked into his office the next morning, her face pale and hands trembling, he knew something had changed. And when she finally told him, when those 3 words, "I'm pregnant," Alexander, slipped past her lips, the world stopped. His expression didn't flicker, but his mind was already racing. A baby. An heir. A scandal that could destroy them both. But beneath the shock, something darker stirred. Possession. Obsession. The unshakable certainty that she, and that child, belonged to him. Meanwhile, across town, another secret was unfolding. Her best friend, Lena, had seen the way Alexander looked at her that night. She knew something had happened, but she never expected this. And now, as she watched her friend's life spiral, she made a decision. One that would pull her into a dangerous game of her own. Because Lena had secrets too. Secrets tied to Alexander's past. Secrets that, if uncovered, could ruin everything. But she wasn't the only one watching. Alexander's business rival, Damian Cole, had caught wind of the pregnancy, and he saw an opportunity. A scandal like this? It was leverage. And he wasn't above using it to tear Alexander apart. The tension thickened when Alexander's estranged father, Richard Carter, reappeared after years of silence. A man even more ruthless than his son, Richard had one rule. No weaknesses star. And a baby? An emotional attachment? That was a vulnerability he wouldn't tolerate. His sudden interest in the pregnancy wasn't paternal concern. It was a threat. Because in the Carter family, love was a liability, and blood meant nothing compared to power. Back in her apartment, she stared at the ultrasound photo, her fingers tracing the tiny blurry outline. She had options. She could run. She could fight. Or she could do the unthinkable. Trust Alexander. But how could she, when every time he looked at her, she saw something terrifying in his eyes? Not anger. Not regret. Something far more dangerous. Certainty star. As if he had already decided their future, and nothing. Not her fears, not his enemies, not even her own resistance, would stop him from claiming what was his. And then the phone rang. A blocked number. A voice she didn't recognize. You think you know him? You have no idea what he's capable of. The line went dead. Her breath caught. Because the truth was, she didn't know him. Not really. And the more she uncovered, the more she realized, this wasn't just about a baby. This was about a war. A war she had just become the center of. And the worst part? She wasn't sure whose side she was on anymore. But before she could process the warning, the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. And when she looked through the peephole, her blood ran cold. Because standing on the other side wasn't Alexander. It was someone far more dangerous. Someone who knew billionaire obsession, secret baby drama, forbidden office romance, possessive love story, intense pregnancy plot, dangerous secrets, billionaire's hidden past, emotional cliffhanger, addictive storytelling. This expansion deepens the plot with layered conflicts, hidden agendas, and escalating tension while keeping the narrative immersive and emotionally charged. The multiple subplots, Lena's secrets, Damian's schemes, Richard's return, create a web of intrigue, ensuring viewers stay hooked. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the door handle, her pulse roaring in her ears. The figure standing outside wasn't Alexander. It was Sophia, his ex-fiancée, the woman who had vanished from his life years ago under mysterious circumstances. Sophia's smile was razor-sharp, her eyes glinting with a knowing cruelty as she stepped inside without invitation. "You poor thing," she murmured, trailing a manicured finger along the edge of the ultrasound photo on the table. You really think he'll let you keep it? The word slithered through the air, poisoning every shred of hope she'd clung to. Because Sophia wasn't just here to taunt her. She was here to claim what she believed was hers. And what followed was a revelation that shattered everything. Alexander hadn't just ended his engagement to Sophia, he'd destroyed her. And she'd returned for revenge, with a plan to rip his newfound family apart. But Alexander was already one step ahead. The moment Sophia resurfaced, his security team alerted him, and within minutes, his car screeched to a halt outside her apartment. Bursting through the door, his presence was a storm of barely contained fury. His gaze locking onto Sophia with a look that could have turned her to ash. "You don't touch her," he growled, the command vibrating with something primal. But Sophia only laughed, pulling out a file, photos, documents, proof of a past Alexander had buried. You think a baby will fix you? She sneered. You're just like your father. The words struck deeper than any blade could, because they held a sliver of truth. Alexander had spent his life running from the monster Richard Carter was, only to realize he might have become him. The confrontation exploded into chaos. Sophia threatened to leak the pregnancy to the press, to expose Alexander's darkest secrets unless he paid her off. But what she didn't know was that Lena had been digging too, uncovering Sophia's own skeletons, including her secret alliance with Damian Cole. In a desperate move, Lena confronted Damien, blackmailing him with evidence of his illegal dealings. The power struggle reached its peak when Richard Carter suddenly intervened, not to protect his son, but to manipulate the situation for his own gain. He offered Sophia a deal: disappear forever, or face the consequences of her own crimes. But Richard's help came with a price. He wanted the baby. "A Carter heir belongs in the family," he declared, his voice dripping with menace. In the midst of the storm, she made her choice. She wasn't a pawn in their games anymore. With Alexander's resources and Lena's loyalty, she outmaneuvered them all. A carefully leaked document to the press exposed Damien's corruption, destroying his reputation. Sophia, cornered and out of options, fled the country. And Richard? Alexander finally faced him, not with rage, but with cold finality. "You'll never touch my child," he vowed, cutting his father out of his life, and his empire for good. But the real twist came after the dust settled. Alexander, the man who'd built walls so high no one could climb them, dropped to his knees in front of her, his voice raw with an emotion he could no longer suppress. "I don't want the baby because it's mine," he admitted, his usual control shattered. I want you. I've wanted you since the first day you walked into my office and refused to look away. It wasn't possession. It wasn't obsession. It was love, messy, terrifying, and utterly real. And when their daughter was born months later, Alexander held her with a reverence that silenced every doubt. The final scene? A private jet, a new life far from the chaos, and a promise whispered against her lips as the sun set over the horizon. No more secrets. No more games. Just us. But as the camera pulls away, one last detail lingers. A single envelope left unopened on the table, the return address smudged but unmistakable. Sophia. Because in a world like theirs, happily ever after was never that simple. This climax delivers high-stakes confrontations, emotional revelations, and a twist that keeps the audience hooked until the last second. The resolution ties up major conflicts while leaving just enough intrigue for future storytelling. Let me know if you'd like any refinements or additional layers.